7 days before I do, my fiancé drained our wedding fund for a cherry red sports car. But the real betrayal wasn't the car. It was who encouraged him to do it. The scent of vanilla buttercream and almond extract still clung to my sweater from our final cake tasting. 7 days. In just 7 days, I was going to be walking down the aisle to marry Mark, the man I'd loved since college. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of checklists, seating charts, and last-minute RSVPs. It was stressful, sure, but it was that good kind of stress, the kind that hums with excitement just beneath the surface. Every decision, every penny saved, was a brick we were laying for the foundation of our future. We weren't wealthy by any means, so our dream wedding was built on sacrifice and careful planning. Our biggest splurge, the one thing we both agreed was non-negotiable, was the reception. We wanted a party, a real celebration with all our friends and family, with an open bar, a great DJ, and food that people would actually talk about afterwards. To make it happen, we'd opened a joint savings account the day we got engaged. We called it the Big Day Fund. For 18 months, we funneled every spare dollar into it. I took on freelance graphic design projects that kept me up until 2 a.m. Mark gave up his weekly poker night with the guys, putting the money he would have lost, or won, he'd argue with a wink, straight into the fund. We packed lunches, brewed coffee at home, and became masters of the stay-at-home date night. Watching that balance climb, dollar by dollar, was one of the most satisfying things we'd ever done together. Last week, we'd hit our goal. $5,000, earmarked specifically for the final payment to the reception venue, due this Friday. I remember feeling a wave of relief so profound, it almost brought me to tears. We'd done it. We had our party paid for. I was sitting at our small kitchen table addressing the last of the thank you card envelopes for the gifts that had arrived early when I heard it. A low, guttural rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, a sound completely alien to our quiet, sensible sedan kind of neighborhood. I glanced out the window, expecting to see a delivery truck or maybe a neighbor's new toy. But the sound wasn't coming from the street. It was coming from our driveway. My brow furrowed. And then I saw it. A gleaming, ridiculously impractical cherry-red convertible sports car was parked right where Mark's beat-up but reliable Civic usually sat. The driver's side door swung open and out stepped Mark, beaming like he'd just won the lottery. He was wearing a new leather jacket I'd never seen before, and sunglasses, even though it was overcast. He struck a pose, leaning against the car with a grin so wide it looked painful. My heart started a frantic, unsteady rhythm in my chest. This had to be a joke, a prank. Maybe he'd rented it for the weekend as a last, single guy hurrah. That had to be it. I pushed my chair back and walked to the front door, opening it slowly. The air was thick with the smell of new car leather and gasoline. "Mark?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. What is this?" "Surprise!" he boomed, spreading his arms wide. "Isn't she a beauty? 2018 model, barely any miles. I got a steal of a deal on it." My mind was a jumble of confusion. A deal? A steal? We didn't have get a deal on a sports car money. We had pay the caterer and hope there's enough left for a decent honeymoon money. "Mark, I don't understand," I said, walking towards him, my feet feeling heavy as lead. "Whose car is this? Did you rent it?" He laughed, a loud, proud sound that grated on my ears. "Rent it? Babe, I bought it. She's all ours." He patted the hood like it was a prized racehorse. "No more squeezing into that old Civic. We're going to be pulling up to our wedding in style." The world tilted on its axis. "Bought it?" The words felt foreign in my mouth. "Mark, how? With what money? We just talked about our budget last night. We don't have money for a car." He waved a dismissive hand, his smile finally faltering a little at the look on my face. "Don't worry about the money, okay? I handled it. It's all taken care of." A cold, sickening dread began to crawl up my spine. Handled it? I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I opened our banking app, my thumb hovering over the Big Day Fund. I prayed. I begged whatever forces were in the universe that the number I was about to see would be the same one I'd seen this morning. I tapped the screen. The page refreshed. My breath caught in my throat. The balance wasn't just low, it was practically zero. 1734s. All that was left was $17.34. I looked up from the screen, my eyes locking with his. The world went silent except for the frantic pounding in my ears. I could feel the blood draining from my face. My voice was dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the hurricane raging inside me. "You bought yourself a car a week before our wedding?" I held up the phone, the screen showing the pathetic remaining balance. "Where did the $5,000 we saved for the reception go?" Mark's confident smirk evaporated, replaced by a defensive scowl. He crossed his arms, refusing to look at my phone. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like the money is gone. It's right here," he said, slapping the hood of the car again. "It's an investment." Tears of rage and disbelief pricked at my eyes. "An investment? In what, Mark? In your midlife crisis, 10 years early. Our reception venue needs to be paid in full in 3 days. Our families are flying in. What were you thinking?" He finally looked at me, his eyes hard and unfamiliar. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial tone that chilled me to the bone. "Look," he hissed, "it wasn't really our money to begin with, okay? It was a gift. My mom gave me that money. She said I deserved to get something for myself, something fun before I. He gestured vaguely between us. "Before all this. She said you wouldn't get it." "My mom?" The words felt like shards of glass in my mouth. For a moment, the cherry red car, the drained bank account, all of it faded into a dull, roaring background. The only thing I could focus on was the image of Mark and his mother, Karen, conspiring behind my back. Karen, who always greeted me with a kiss on both cheeks and called me the daughter she never had. Karen, who I was supposed to call Mom in 7 days. "Your mom gave you that money? Mark, I transferred over $2,000 from my freelance account into that fund. I have the records. I have the late-night invoices to prove it. We sat at this very table and watched me do it." My voice was rising, cracking with a hurt so deep it felt physical. I remembered the nights I'd spent hunched over my laptop, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, tweaking a logo for a demanding client, all while picturing our friends and family dancing at our wedding. Every single dollar had a story of sacrifice attached to it. His poker nights, my weekends, our date nights, and he was standing there, erasing it all with a single devastating lie. "That was our money," I insisted, my voice trembling. "We earned it. Together." He had the grace to look slightly ashamed, shuffling his feet on the pristine asphalt of the driveway. "Okay, fine. Not all of it was from her. But she gave us a big chunk to start us off, remember? $1,000 when we got engaged. And she said the spirit of the gift was for me. She's been worried that I'm losing myself in all this wedding planning." He gestured vaguely toward our house, toward the life we were building. "She thinks you're taking over." The accusation hit me like a slap. Taking over? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "I'm taking over by making sure our caterer gets paid? By tracking RSVPs and building a spreadsheet so our families don't have to sit next to ex-spouses? Mark, this is called planning a wedding. It's what adults do. What part of this says I'm losing myself, and what part says I should drain our joint savings for a toy?" I pointed a shaking finger at the ridiculous car. "This isn't you, Mark. The Mark I know drives a Civic with a dent in the bumper because he helped his friend move a couch. The Mark I know understands responsibility. That's the guy you want to marry? Some boring, responsible chump?" He shot back, his voice dripping with a bitterness I'd never heard before. "Maybe I want to be the guy who pulls up in a cool car. Maybe I'm tired of being sensible. My mom gets that. She said I deserved a reward for going through with all this." There it was again, that phrase, going through with all this. As if our wedding was a prison sentence he was about to begin. The foundation we'd been building for years suddenly felt like it was made of sand, and a tidal wave was crashing down on it. The car wasn't the problem anymore. It was a symptom of a much deeper, more terrifying sickness in our relationship. The lies, his mother's influence, his resentment, it was all coming to the surface. I shook my head, my mind racing. 3 days. I had 3 days to find $5,000, but more importantly, I had to figure out who the hell I was about to marry. I needed the truth, and I knew I wasn't going to get it from the man standing in front of me, who looked more like a stranger with every word he spoke. My resolve hardened. I pulled my phone back out, my fingers flying over the screen, past the banking app and to my contacts. "What are you doing?" Mark asked, his voice sharp with alarm. "I'm calling your mother," I said, my voice cold and even. "I want to hear it from her. I want to hear her tell me that she encouraged her son to steal our wedding money and lie to my face." "Don't," he said, lunging forward and grabbing for the phone. "Don't call her. You're just going to make everything worse. You're being hysterical." I snatched my hand back, clutching the phone to my chest. Hysterical. I think I'm being remarkably calm for someone whose fiancé just gambled our entire reception on a car and a lie from his mommy. I found her name, Karen, and pressed the call button. The phone began to ring, each chime an eternity. Mark just stood there, his face a mask of panic and fury. He opened his mouth to say something else, but then the ringing stopped. A sickly sweet voice filled the silence. "Sarah, dear, I was just thinking about you. Are you getting excited? Only 1 week to go." I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "Hi, Karen. I have to ask you something. It's about Mark. It's about the money you gave him." There was a slight pause on the other end, and then a cheerful, tinkling laugh that made every hair on my arms stand on end. "Oh, the car money, of course. He sent me a picture this morning. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so glad you two finally decided to treat yourselves. He told me you were the one who picked out that beautiful red." The world went silent. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, crushing quiet. "I picked it out?" I repeated, my voice a hollow echo of Karen's chirpy tone. I stared at Mark, whose face had gone from panic to ashen white. He was shaking his head frantically, mouthing the word "no" over and over, his eyes wide with a terror I didn't understand. He looked trapped. "Yes, silly." Karen's laugh tinkled through the phone again, a sound that now felt like ice scraping down my spine. "He told me you both went to the dealership yesterday, that you fell in love with it the moment you saw it. He said you convinced him it was the perfect pre-wedding gift to yourselves. A way to start your new life with a little bit of fun and flair. I thought it was so wonderfully spontaneous of you, Sarah. You're usually so practical." Every word was a nail being hammered into a coffin. My coffin. They hadn't just lied to me. They had built an entirely different reality, a shared delusion where I was a willing, even enthusiastic participant in my own financial ruin. I was no longer just the victim. In their story, I was the instigator. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. Mark hadn't just thrown me under the bus, he'd handed his mother the keys and pointed her in my direction. "Karen," I said, my voice dangerously steady, "Mark and I did not go to a dealership yesterday. I haven't seen this car before in my life, and I certainly did not approve of him spending $5,000 from our reception fund on it." There was a long, charged silence on the other end. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, the carefully constructed narrative crumbling. When she finally spoke, the saccharine sweetness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. "Well, that's not what my son told me. He said the money was a gift from me to him, a personal gift. I simply told him he should use it for something that makes him happy before he gets tied down. Boys need their toys, you know." The condescension in her voice was thick enough to choke on. "It wasn't just your money, Karen. $1,000 from you was a wedding gift to us. The rest of it, the other $4,000, Mark and I saved ourselves. I worked nights for that money. We sacrificed for that money. It wasn't for a toy. It was for our wedding. Oh, don't be so melodramatic, Sarah, she sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. It's just a party. You can have a perfectly lovely wedding without all that extravagance. A simple backyard gathering can be very charming. But Mark deserves to feel like a man. He's been under so much pressure. You have to understand this wedding of yours. It's a lot. You're a very particular girl. A particular girl. The words hung in the air, dripping with unspoken criticism. Particular for wanting the wedding we had both agreed on? Particular for creating a budget and sticking to it? Particular for not wanting my fiancé to secretly drain our joint account based on his mother's toxic advice? I looked at Mark, who was now staring at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. He was a puppet, and I could finally see the strings leading directly from his arms and legs into his mother's manicured hands. He hadn't done this alone. This was a coup, planned and executed by the two people who were supposed to be my new family. "I have to go, Karen," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. I ended the call before she could offer any more of her poisonous wisdom. The silence that followed was deafening. The ridiculous cherry-red car seemed to mock me from the driveway, a monument to their betrayal. "Sarah, baby, I can explain," Mark started, taking a tentative step towards me. His voice was pleading, desperate. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand to stop him. The word came out sharp, like a crack of a whip. "Don't you dare. There is no explanation. There's only what you did. You lied to me. You stole from us. And you let your mother paint me as some kind of controlling villain to justify it. You let her call me a particular girl for wanting the wedding we planned together." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and furious. "What else, Mark? What else have you and your mother been discussing behind my back? Do you even want to marry me? Or is this, as you so delicately put it, just something you have to go through with?" He flinched, as if I'd physically struck him. "Of course I want to marry you. That's not... She just gets in my head sometimes. She twisted things. It was my idea, okay? All of it. I wanted the car. I wanted to feel, I don't know, powerful, I guess. Just for a minute. And I knew you wouldn't approve, so I lied. I'm sorry." But the apology felt hollow, a desperate attempt to put a bandage on a gaping, mortal wound. He was only sorry because he got caught. He wasn't sorry for the lies, for the betrayal, for the conspiracy with his mother. "Sorry doesn't pay the caterer, Mark," I said, my voice breaking. "Sorry doesn't fix this." I wiped my eyes, a sudden cold clarity washing over me. This was bigger than the money. This was about trust, about partnership, about the man I was supposed to promise my life to. I turned and walked back into the house, my mind a storm of impossible choices. The wedding was in 7 days. Invitations were sent. Family was flying in. The shame of calling it off felt like a physical weight on my chest, but the thought of walking down the aisle towards him, that felt infinitely worse. I went straight to our bedroom, the one we shared, and pulled my suitcase out from under the bed. I started pulling my clothes from the closet, my movements mechanical. Mark followed me, his face a mess of confusion and fear. "What are you doing? Sarah, stop. We can fix this. I'll return the car." "Can you, Mark?" I asked, not even looking at him as I folded a sweater with numb fingers. "Can you really? You drove it off the lot. It's a used car now. You'll never get the full $5,000 back. Even if you did, what about the trust? Can you return that too?" He sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "Please, don't leave. We can talk to my mom. We'll get the money from her. I'll make her give it to us." The idea was so absurd I almost laughed. "You think she's just going to hand over $5,000 after the speech she just gave me? Mark, she's the one who gave you the green light to do this. She's not on our side. She's on your side." I zipped the suitcase shut and stood up, looking around the room that was supposed to be our future. It suddenly felt like a stranger's house. I picked up my purse from the dresser, and as I did, my fingers brushed against a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was the final bill from the venue, which had arrived in the mail that morning. I'd left it there to show Mark tonight so we could celebrate making the last big payment together. I picked it up, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. I turned to face him, the envelope in my hand. "It doesn't matter anymore," I said quietly. "You're right. Your mom will give you the money." Mark looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "She will?" "Oh, yes," I said, a bitter, unfamiliar smile touching my lips. "She'll have to, because I'm going to go over to her house right now and give her this." I held up the envelope, and I'm going to tell her that since she and her son decided to buy a car instead of a wedding reception, she'll be the one responsible for calling all 150 of our guests to explain why the wedding is off. Mark's face crumpled. The flicker of hope in his eyes was extinguished, replaced by a raw, primal panic. "No, Sarah, you can't do that," he choked out, scrambling to his feet. "You can't. It would kill her. The humiliation. All her friends are coming. Her sister is flying in from Oregon." "And my grandmother is flying in from Florida," I retorted, my voice like ice. "My maid of honor took a week of unpaid leave from her job as a nurse. Your best man booked a non-refundable hotel room. Should I go on, Mark? Because I can. I can list every single person who is about to be massively inconvenienced because you wanted a toy and your mother thinks our marriage is you getting tied down." I took a step toward the bedroom door, my suitcase in hand. "This is the consequence of your actions, both of you. You wanted to make decisions about our wedding without me? Fine. Now you get to handle the fallout without me." He physically blocked my path, his hands held up in a placating gesture. He looked utterly broken, a pathetic shadow of the man who had been preening by his new car less than an hour ago. "Please, Sarah, just give me a chance, one chance to fix it. I'll sell the car. I'll list it online right now. I'll take a loss. I don't care. I'll pick up extra shifts. I'll borrow money from my dad. Please, just don't go to my mom's. Don't cancel the wedding." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of genuine remorse, any glimmer of the man I had fallen in love with. All I saw was fear. Not the fear of losing me, but the fear of being exposed. The fear of facing the public shame he had so carelessly orchestrated. He wasn't fighting for our relationship. He was fighting for his reputation. "It's too late for that, Mark," I said, my voice weary. "This isn't about the money anymore, don't you get it? This is about everything else. The lies, the secrets, the fact that you and your mother have been having these little chats about how I'm taking over and how you need to be rewarded for marrying me. How long has that been going on? All of it. I want to know." He had the decency to look away. It's not like that. She just worries about me. I'm her only son. She just wants to control you," I finished for him. "And you just let her. You let her poison you against me, against us. She planted a seed of doubt in your mind, and instead of talking to me about it, you nurtured it. You watered it with secrets and lies until it grew into this monstrosity in our driveway." I gestured vaguely toward the front of the house. "A $5,000 symbol of your deceit." I pushed past him, my shoulder bumping his, and walked out of the bedroom. My steps were heavy, each one an effort. I could feel his eyes on my back as I walked through our living room, a space filled with memories that now felt tainted. The photo frame on the mantel from our trip to the Grand Canyon, the lumpy couch where we'd binge-watched entire seasons of shows, the rug we'd spent a whole Saturday picking out together. It was all part of a life I no longer recognized. He followed me to the front door. "Where are you going to go?" he asked, his voice small. "To my sister's," I said, without turning around. "I'm going to call my parents, and then I'm going to start making some other calls. To the venue, to the caterer, to the florist. I'm going to see what, if anything, can be salvaged." I finally turned to face him, my hand on the doorknob. The look of utter devastation on his face gave me a bitter, hollow satisfaction. You should probably start making some calls too. Maybe start with your mom. Let her know the good news. She got what she wanted. You're not getting tied down anymore. With that, I opened the door and walked out, not looking back. I hauled my suitcase to my own sensible, paid-off sedan and threw it in the back seat. As I got into the driver's seat, I could see Mark standing in the doorway, a silhouette of regret against the warm light of the home we were supposed to share. He didn't move. He just watched as I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, leaving him alone with his cherry-red monument to betrayal. The 10-minute drive to my sister's house felt like an eternity. My mind was a chaotic whirlwind of anger, grief, and a terrifyingly blank space where my future used to be. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I was sobbing, great, gasping breaths that racked my entire body. My sister Chloe must have seen me from the window because she was out the door before I had even turned off the engine. She wrapped me in a hug as I stumbled out of the car, and I just fell apart in her arms, the whole sordid story tumbling out of me between sobs. She listened patiently, her expression hardening with every detail. When I was finished, she led me inside, sat me down on her couch with a cup of tea, and put a blanket around my shoulders. "Okay," she said, her voice a perfect blend of soothing and furious. "He's a spineless, cheating liar, and his mother is a manipulative witch. We knew this. But canceling the wedding... Sarah, are you sure? Everything is done. Everyone is coming." "What choice do I have, Chloe?" I whispered, staring into my mug. "Walk down the aisle to a man who conspired with his mother to steal from us? A man who thinks marrying me is a chore he deserves a prize for completing? I can't. I just can't." "I know," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "You're right." She was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in thought. Then her eyes lit up with a dangerous glint I knew all too well. It was the look she got right before she did something incredibly impulsive and brilliant. "You know," she began slowly, "we have a non-refundable venue, a non-refundable caterer for 150 people, a non-refundable DJ, and a fully stocked, prepaid, open bar." I looked at her confused. "What's your point?" She grinned, a slow, wicked smile spreading across her face. "My point is, who says you have to cancel the party? The wedding might be off, but the reception is paid for. Or it will be. We just need to find $5,000 in the next 48 hours, and I think I know exactly where to get it." She stood up and grabbed her car keys from the hook by the door. "Come on, get in the car and bring that invoice from the venue." "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice still thick with tears. Chloe's smile widened. "We're going to see your future father-in-law." The idea was so audacious, so utterly terrifying that it shocked me out of my grief-stricken haze. Go see Mark's dad? Frank was a quiet, stoic man, a retired mechanic who spent most of his days in his garage. He was the polar opposite of Karen. While she flitted about, dripping with passive aggression and veiled insults, Frank was a man of few words and even fewer opinions, at least on the surface. He'd always been kind to me in his gruff, reserved way, but I couldn't imagine involving him in this mess. It felt like a massive overstep. "Chloe, no," I said, shaking my head. "We can't. This is between me, Mark, and Karen. Dragging his father into it it's wrong." "What's wrong?" she countered, pulling me to my feet. "Is you losing thousands of dollars and the party of a lifetime because your fiancé is a mama's boy and his mother is a saboteur. Frank is a good man. He's a practical man. He understands the value of a dollar and the importance of a promise. Unlike his wife and son, he deserves to know what they've done. Now, are you coming, or am I going alone?" Knowing my sister, she absolutely would go alone. The thought of Chloe, in all her righteous fury, confronting Frank by herself was enough to get me moving. I grabbed the venue invoice and followed her out to the car, my heart hammering against my ribs. During the drive, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Chloe was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the principle of the thing. The injustice of it all burned hotter than my sadness. When we pulled up to their immaculate suburban home, my stomach churned. The cherry-red convertible was conspicuously absent. Mark hadn't even had the guts to face his parents yet. We walked up the stone path and Chloe rang the doorbell before I could lose my nerve. It was Frank who answered, a grease-stained rag in his hand and a surprised look on his face. "Sarah? Chloe? What's going on? Is everything all right?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "Frank, I'm so sorry to bother you," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "But something has happened. Can we come in?" He ushered us into the living room, a space so perfectly decorated it looked like no one ever actually lived in it. Karen was nowhere in sight. I took a deep breath, and with Chloe's hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder, I told him everything. I laid out the whole story, from the 18 months of diligent saving to the sound of the sports car in the driveway. I told him about the drained bank account, Mark's flimsy excuses, and the devastating phone call with Karen. I didn't cry. My voice was cold, clinical, as I presented the facts. At the end, I placed the $5,000 invoice on the coffee table between us. Frank listened to the entire story without interruption. His face, normally placid, slowly hardened into a mask of cold fury. He stared at the invoice on the table, then looked at me, his eyes filled with a profound and unfamiliar emotion. It was shame, deep, gut-wrenching shame. He was silent for a full minute, and I started to think I had made a terrible mistake. Then he stood up. "Wait here," he said, his voice a low growl. He walked out of the room and towards the back of the house. We could hear the garage door opening, followed by muffled but clearly furious yelling. It was Karen's voice, high and defensive, punctuated by Frank's deep, booming retorts. Chloe and I just sat there exchanging wide-eyed glances. After about 10 minutes, which felt like 10 hours, Frank returned. Karen trailed behind him, looking like she'd been crying. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Frank walked over to a heavy oak bureau in the corner, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a checkbook. He sat down at the coffee table, wrote out a check with swift, angry strokes, and tore it from the book. He pushed it across the table towards me. It was made out to the reception venue for the full $5,000. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "there is no apology deep enough for what my wife and my son have done. This is not the way I raised him, to be a liar and a thief." He shot a venomous glare at Karen, who flinched. "You will have your reception. You earned it. As for the wedding, that is your decision. But I want you to know whatever you choose, I will support you. I always thought of you as a daughter. Today you have more honor than anyone else in this house." Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Frank," I whispered. Karen, goaded by a sharp look from her husband, finally spoke. "I am." "Sorry, Sarah," she mumbled, her eyes fixed on the carpet. "I was wrong. I was only trying to look out for my son." "You can look out for him by paying me back," Frank snapped without looking at her, "and he can start looking for a new place to live." The drive back to Chloe's was surreal. I held the check in my hand, the ink still feeling fresh. We had the money, the reception was saved, but the wedding was still broken. The next 48 hours were a blur. I paid the venue. I called Mark and told him what happened, told him that his father had fixed his mess. He was pathetically grateful, begging me to reconsider, telling me he'd start therapy, that he'd do anything. I just told him I needed time. The morning of the wedding arrived. I woke up on Chloe's couch with a pit in my stomach. My dress was hanging on the back of the door, a beautiful, innocent thing that felt like it belonged to another woman, from another lifetime. I still didn't know what I was going to do. Chloe came in with 2 cups of coffee. "So," she said gently, "what's the plan, Stan?" I looked at the dress, then at her. "The wedding is off," I said, and the finality of the words felt both devastating and liberating. but I'm not going to let them ruin this day. We have a $5,000 party waiting for us, and I'm not going to waste it." A slow smile spread across Chloe's face. That's my girl. We spent the next few hours on the phone. I called Mark and told him not to come. His tearful protests were met with a firm, simple no. Then Chloe and I called the wedding party and our closest friends and family. We told them the truth. The wedding was off, but the celebration was on. We told them to wear their party clothes, but to leave the wedding gifts at home. That evening, I didn't put on my wedding dress. I put on the slinky sequin dress I had bought for my bachelorette party. I walked into that beautifully decorated reception hall, my head held high, with Chloe by my side, and every single person I loved was there. My parents, my grandmother, all my friends. They hugged me, they told me I was brave, and they didn't ask too many questions. They were just there for me. Frank showed up, alone. He gave me a hug and said, "I'm proud of you, kid." He stayed for an hour, had a drink, and wished me all the best before quietly leaving. Mark and Karen were, thankfully, nowhere to be seen. We danced. We ate the amazing food. We drank from the open bar. I gave a speech, raising a glass of champagne. I didn't mention Mark. I just thanked everyone for their love and support, for helping me through the hardest week of my life, and for being there to celebrate my new beginning. It wasn't a wedding reception. It was an independence party. And as I looked around at the faces of the people who truly loved me, I knew I had made the right decision. I had lost a fiancé, but I had found myself, and that was a reason to celebrate.